people, to show folks in California some compassion as they are reckoning with an unimaginable disaster. While nothing can bring back what many have lost, the president and his administration are continuing to use every tool at our disposal to help fight these fires and ensure that the communities impacted are able to recover. The president has received regular briefings on the fires, and at his direction, his team has been in constant contact with their state and local counterparts from the day the fire started. Just last night, he spoke separately with Governor Newsom, Senator Schiff, Congressman Sherman and Lieu, Mayor Bass, and LA County Supervisor Solis and Barger to discuss the latest updates on the wildfires across Los Angeles. And earlier this week, the president was in California, where he received briefings from personnel on the ground and met with firefighters who are on the front lines of this response to ensure they have the resources they need. As soon as the fires broke out, FEMA approved fire management assistance grants to reimburse California for firefighting costs, and the president immediately approved the state's request for a major disaster declaration for California, allowing impacted communities and survivors to immediately access funds and resources to jumpstart their recovery. As you just heard from the president moments ago, we have made some progress over the last 24 hours. Overnight, local, state, and federal firefighters partially contained some of the largest wildfires. There is still a long way to go, but we will continue to be with the people of California every step of the way. Other actions the Biden-Harris administration has taken is to support local firefighting efforts include 5 U.S. Forest Service large air tankers operating in Southern California with an additional tanker en route, over 20 federal firefighting helicopters performing operations in the area in support of state and local firefighters. Additionally, 2 air firefighting system units are being deployed from each of the California and Nevada National Guards, and 10 Navy helicopters with water buckets are en route from San Diego. And Colorado is providing assistance from the mobilization of aviation assets as well as fielding of 50 engine companies to assist with firefighting on the ground. As always, we stand ready to provide further support as needed, and we urge residents in the affected areas to remain vigilant and heed the warnings of local officials, especially if you have been ordered to evacuate. And to everyone impacted by this tragedy, please remember that we see you, we are with you, and we will do everything within our power to get you the help that you need. With that, I will turn it over to the FEMA Administrator, Criswell. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Thank you, Karine. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, I just want to start by telling everybody that has been impacted by these devastating fires that my heart is with each and every one of you. And I know that you continue to face these fires as they are still working to bring them under control. And unfortunately, this will probably be a life-changing event for so many of you. But FEMA is here along with our entire federal family to help you through this recovery process. We are going to continue to support the state and the local jurisdictions, the local first responders, as they continue to try to contain this fire and eventually extinguish this fire. I arrived on the ground yesterday, as Karine said, at the direction of the president. I had an opportunity to meet with Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass. We discussed what their immediate needs were, as well as began the conversation about what their recovery needs are going to be. The governor, the mayor, and I had an opportunity just before this to also brief the president and the vice president about what their concerns are, about what their needs are going to be, and provided an update on the current status of the firefighting operations. Yesterday, I also had an opportunity to receive briefings from the incident command posts at the Palisades fire, as well as the Eaton fire. And I think the most important thing that I want to make sure I continue to get across to everyone is this situation is still very dangerous. It is still very dynamic. The winds have died down today, but as I just got a weather briefing at the county EOC, the winds are going to increase again in the coming days. And so people still need to stay vigilant, They need to listen to their local officials. They need to heed their advice so they can keep themselves and their families safe. I also want to just take a minute to commend all of the amazing and heroic work that the firefighters are doing around the clock to fight these fires. They have been working night and day. I had a chance to speak with several of them, some of them whose homes have also been lost or their families have had to evacuate. Yet they still show up every day supporting their communities, trying to keep them safe. And I just want to say thank you. I want to thank all of them for their heroic efforts because they are making a difference. Now, while the National Interagency Fire Center continues to provide resources to support CAL FIRE and the Los Angeles County and City Fire Departments, FEMA is also supporting the recovery efforts. We're supporting those that have been impacted by this fire. I even met with the SBA administrator here just briefly, who is also here to support them, businesses and individuals that have been impacted by these fires. With the quick major disaster declaration, residents can now register and begin their recovery journey. Some of the immediate things that we can provide to them are to cover the costs that they're incurring as they have been evacuated, helping to support what their longer-term shelter and housing needs are going to be. We can also help support crisis counseling and disaster unemployment. These are just a few of the programs that we have. We have many more, and I encourage everyone to begin that process by registering now. Recovery from these fires is going to be complex. I've seen many disasters throughout my 4 years in this role. This is certainly one of the worst that I have seen. And the debris removal alone is going to be one of the major things that we have to accomplish, that the state has to accomplish to get this recovery journey started. And that's why when President Biden authorized 100% reimbursement for the first 180 days is really going to set the stage to jumpstart this recovery for these communities. I had a chance to drive through some of the communities that were impacted as well. And it's not just the homes that are lost. We've seen schools that have been destroyed, businesses, small businesses, religious institutions. These are things that we are going to be able to help with temporary facilities like temporary schools to help get children back into the schoolhouse, but also any other emergency measures as they begin the work of permanent repair. Thousands of homes have been destroyed, and we continue to hear the numbers change, but know that this is going to be a long-term recovery for all of these individuals that have been impacted. And as I told the governor and the mayor yesterday and today, I assured them that our programs, our staff, the entire federal family are going to be here with them, alongside them, helping them achieve the outcomes that they need to not just rebuild these communities, but also rebuild them in a way that's going to make them stronger and more resistant to the types of weather events that they have been experiencing. This recovery journey is going to be long, but we are going to be there with them to support them every step of the way. And with that, Karine, I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you so much, Administrator. Go ahead, C.
Thanks, Karine. Thanks, Administrator. I hope you could speak to whether your agency has enough money currently to fund the immediate response needs, or is there a need to go to Congress quickly to get additional funds? And then separately, 10 days out from the presidential transition, what steps are underway at FEMA to ensure that what has been done so far, what's going to be done in the coming days, is sustained at the career level and beyond, into the new administration? Thank you.
Yeah, with the recent supplemental, FEMA received $27 billion. And so we are now able to continue to support the ongoing recovery efforts for all of the disasters that we've been supporting, to include now the immediate response and the initial recovery efforts that are going to be needed here in California. So we're very grateful for the bipartisan support from Congress to give us that additional funding so we can meet the needs of the individuals that have been impacted. And as far as going through the transition, we have an amazing, dedicated workforce of women and men that are going to be able to continue to support them. Our regional administrator here has worked many fires across several different administrations, and we are going to work day in and day out to continue to support them through the authorities that are given to us through the Stafford Act.
Thank you, Administrator, for taking our questions. I wonder, realistically, how quickly will people be able to obtain these temporary living quarters? What are you doing to set those up? Where are you setting them up? And how are you making sure to get in contact with people that may need those temporary shelters?
Yeah, so the first step that everybody needs to do, there's two things. They need to register for assistance with FEMA so they get in our system and we can continue to work with them on a case-by-case basis, because we know that everybody is going to have an individual and unique need, and they need to contact their insurance company because their insurance company may also provide alternate living expenses. We have a suite of tools, and one of the biggest tools and the best resources we have is reimbursing individuals for either the hotel costs that they're experiencing right now, or if they find a place to rent, reimbursing them for rental assistance. Given where we're at right now, we know that there's going to be a lot of rental resources, and that's going to be the best resource and the best tool that we have to support the families that have been impacted. But we have other tools in our toolbox. And so, again, we want to work with everybody individually because we know that everybody's situation is going to be different, and we're going to apply the right tool for their particular situation.
Thank you, Administrator. I know you can't obviously put a dollar sign on this, but can you just help us put into perspective a bit how you think the cost of this may compare to the cost of other recent natural disasters? And I'm hoping you could also comment on some misinformation that's out there. We've seen these erroneous evacuation orders and how concerned you are that may lead to people to not responding to or not paying close enough attention to actual real alerts.
Yeah, it's really hard right now on the cost of the disaster to put a number on it because we haven't been able to assess how much of the infrastructure has been damaged. I mean, we know the thousands of homes that have been impacted, but the real cost of these disasters comes from how much of the actual infrastructure has been damaged, the roads, the water system, the power, but also the soft costs and the economic impact. We know that this is going to be billions. And so we really want to continue to focus right now on whatever we can do to continue to support California in getting this fire suppressed and starting this recovery process. And again, thanks to the bipartisan support of Congress, we have enough funding to support those recovery efforts and these response efforts. And as far as the misinformation and the alert that went out, I mean, we want to make sure people are getting timely and accurate information. And I will defer to the county for the specifics on what they're doing as far as that alert, but know that it's part of our wireless emergency alert platform that FEMA offers to state and locals, and we are providing technical assistance to them to make sure we can help them understand what happened and ensure that it doesn't happen again, because we have to be able to send out accurate information so we can give people the right information and they know to believe it.
Good job.
Thanks, Karine. Administrator, the President was referring in the Oval earlier and yesterday to, I guess, some misinformation about the fire hydrants. Can you just spell it out clearly? Is there a water shortage? Is there an issue with water? And if not, what's the issue?
Yeah, I mean, I would really defer to the city and the county for the specifics, but what I have been briefed is that it was an overload of the system, right? There were so many simultaneous fires that happened at once. There was multiple firefighting resources that were utilizing and using the water system to put out these fires, and it put a strain on the system, and it takes time for that system to then regenerate. But the specifics on it, I really just want to make sure that you talk with them. As we heard from, the Los Angeles City Fire Chief yesterday, they plan for this. They have other resources available with water tenders, and now we have the ability to fly the aircraft into these communities to help put that fire out. And so it really, you talk about the multiple simultaneous fires that started, and it just put a strain on the system from my understanding.
Just one follow-up on the coordination with the incoming administration. Are you speaking to anyone yourself on the transition, and has the misinformation aspect come up in those discussions?
So we have a whole team dedicated to be working with the transition team, and they're providing regular briefings to them on a daily basis. And so we're providing whatever information that they ask for.
President Biden committed to 180 days of 100% match on recovery funds. Just technically, how is he able to commit to 6 months when he's only going to be in office for 10 more days? Is that locked in, or could that change if the next administration has a different idea?
You know, this is a practice that many administrations have utilized to help support the immediate needs in the response to one of these major catastrophic disasters. And what we want to be able to do is recognize the catastrophic impact of that. And the president has the authority through the statute, through law, to be able to commit this amount of funding to support the recovery efforts. I would hope that we look at this, as I think Karine said earlier, that these are communities that have had a catastrophic impact, and that we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can as a federal family to support them on this recovery journey. The statute, the law, allows us to do exactly what we did and allows the president to make that determination, and this is what they need. They need this support in order to facilitate the recovery that's going to have to happen.
And just a quick follow, does that mean that it can't be rolled back?
I mean, I'm certain that, you know, anybody can make a determination on if they want to do something or not, but this was done according to the statute, and I would think that the statute would say that this is the direction that needs to happen and that it shouldn't be rolled back.
This is Arlette Sines with CNN. In your conversations with any of the local officials, have any of them expressed concerns about the possibility that that funding could be rolled back?
Well, I think I've gotten the question from several people about what's going to happen over the transition. And the same thing that I've said to you is that we have dedicated career women and men that have been supporting disaster response for everywhere around the country, not just this administration, but the previous administration and every administration before that. And the actions that we have taken in this administration are no different than the types of declarations that have happened before. And I want to assure them that the law, the Stafford Act, that gives us the authority to provide these declarations is one that has withstood since 1979, and we will continue to implement it as directed by the law.
Kelly.
Administrator Kelly O'Donnell from NBC. Do you have concerns about the inventory of available housing for people who've been displaced and for the length of time it would take for rebuilding? Obviously, it's going to be some time before you can even clear parcels that people may own or what have you. Do you see almost an extinction of some of these communities for a period of time?
So we're going to work with the state to understand what the housing stock is, because as I said, one of the best resources that we have is our rental assistance, and we want to get people into that longer term temporary situation as quickly as possible so they can continue on with their lives. We're going to have to do an assessment to see what the availability is and then determine if we're going to need to bring in other tools to help support the ongoing housing requirement for these communities. But know that our goal is to keep people in these communities. We do not want them to move far from their communities. This is where they work. This is where their schools are. This is where their family, their religious institutions are. And so our goal is to find everything we can as close to their communities so they can keep the community part of them intact, right? The houses and the buildings might be gone, but the community stays, right? That community spirit will always be there. And so that is what our goal is, and that's what we'll work with the state and the county to achieve.
Okay. In the back, go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. Thanks, Administrator. The President previewed that the death toll was likely to increase. Does the federal government have a handle on how many missing people there are, as well as any advice you have for people dealing with air quality issues at the moment?
So I didn't hear the second question, but to answer the first question, that's something I would have to defer to the state. All of those numbers come from the coroner to determine the number of fatalities, and the number missing is something that they'll track. We're just going to continue to support them if they need resources to help with that. And then what was your second question?
Just about advice that you would have for people dealing with air quality issues in the area?
With their what issues?
Air quality issues in the area.
Oh, air quality. Air quality issues. Again, listening to your local officials, there's definitely air quality issues around the area. And, You know, the beauty of the wind dying down is that they can get better control over the fires, but it also doesn't blow the smoke out. And so there are definitely a lot of concerns from across the area here about what the air quality is going to look like. And so they need to make the decisions that's best for them. And I know that the departments of public health at both the county and the state are providing information and guidance. And I would have them listen to them for what the best resources are for them to protect themselves from the air quality impacts from these fires.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. Thank you, Administrator. I'm curious, as you're briefing the incoming administration, are there specific steps you are recommending that they take in this response, given how long-term it's likely going to be?
Yeah, that's something that, I mean, our career staff that are here on the ground in California that are going to be back at headquarters, they will continue to work through all of the requirements to support the recovery efforts. And as the incoming administration comes on board, we will give them an update as to where we're at with the status and any challenges that we're finding and the direction and the vision that we need to do to achieve the governor, the mayor's outcomes for this disaster recovery, but all of the disaster recoveries, right? We had 179 disaster declarations just last year alone. And so our team that has been working these day in and day out for the last 4 years will continue to do so within the new administration.
Okay, last question.
Thank you, Karine. So as the rebuilding gets underway, will there be any requirements around fire-resistant building materials to be used and other safety measures that, you know, construction folks should adhere to?
I just want to make sure I heard the question. As the rebuilding begins, are there going to be requirements on how they rebuild? Did I hear that right? I'm sorry.
Yes, on fire resistance.
Yeah, fire resistance.
Yeah, so one of the things that we can do to help support these communities is we do have mechanisms through our mitigation programs, whether that's in the public infrastructure that's getting rebuilt or through our hazard mitigation grants that the state can offer. As they rebuild, we want them to rebuild in a way that helps make them more fire resistant. And so we encourage the use of that flexibility within our authorities to make sure that these communities are stronger to face any future events that they might see like this.
Okay. All right, Administrator, since we have 10 days left, I wanted to be sure to say thank you so much for your service. It's been an honor to work with you. Please stay safe in California. And again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Karine. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, I have actually two more things, and then I'll get to questions. So I'll quickly turn to Venezuela, where Maduro once again demonstrated his complete disregard for democratic norms and proceeded with his illegitimate inauguration. As President Biden emphasized during his meeting with President-elect Edmundo Gonzalez Urrutia on Monday, January 6, we believe that it is essential that the will of the Venezuelan people is respected. In coordination with our partners, we've given Maduro and his representatives every opportunity to restore democracy, but they haven't. So today we are building on all of our previous actions and taking further major actions. We announced new sanctions on key Maduro-aligned officials as a part of our efforts to hold them accountable, and we imposed more visa restrictions totaling nearly 2,000 individuals. We also increased the reward amount to $25 million for Nicolas Maduro and his so-called Minister of Interior as part of the Department of State's Narcotics Rewards program, only the second and third to have the largest amount allowed. It is important to note that we are taking these actions alongside similar actions taken by Canada, the European Union, the United Kingdom, to demonstrate a message of solidarity with the Venezuelan people and further elevate international efforts to maintain pressure on Maduro and his representatives. Today, Maduro finds himself more alone than ever, with few friends in the region and in the world and around the world. And before I get to your question, just one more thing. I did want to highlight some good news we received this morning. The final jobs report for the Biden-Harris administration was released today, and a remarkable 250,000 jobs were created last month, defying expectations. Additionally, the unemployment rate ticked down to a low of 4.1%. This is the only administration to gain jobs every month. We had 0 months with job losses. This was no accident. President Biden's administration has delivered the strongest recovery in the world and laid a strong foundation for years to come by investing in America, empowering workers and unions, lowering costs, and supporting small businesses. Over 16.6 million jobs created, the lowest average unemployment rate of any administration in 50 years, record high employment rates for working age women, and lowest black-white unemployment gap on record. Inflation down faster than almost any other advanced economy, and incomes up almost $4,000. And again, this was no accident. This is because of the president's leadership. And as the president said, our nation faces an inflection point. Do we continue to grow the economy from the middle out and bottom up, or do we backslide to trickle down economics? And that is a question that we have to ask. In the meantime, we'll continue with this briefing. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. First off, yesterday the Senate advanced the Lincoln-Riley Act, which passed the House. If it's presented to him before he leaves office on the 20th, would the president sign that bill or veto it?
So I'm not going to get ahead of what's happening. I know there was a procedural vote that happened in the Senate. I'm going to let the process play out. Let the senators do their work on that. I don't want to get ahead of that. So we're going to let it play out. I'm not going to get into hypothetical on this right now.
The administration also often puts out statements of administration policy where it stands that you're not putting one out here.
Well, the process is still playing out, and so we're going to certainly follow all of the latest developments on this, and so we want to evaluate the bill. We haven't done that yet. We want to evaluate the bill certainly at the end of that process, and then we will have more to say. I just don't want to get ahead of it right now.
And the president of the Oval said he'd be speaking to us later today about Russia and some other issues. Is that going to happen?
So we'll have more to share with all of you on what the president's going to be speaking on. Certainly, we'll share that shortly.
He'll be speaking today?
That's what the president said, and that's what we're working out.
And then lastly, it's customary for presidents often to leave office with a final press conference. Does the president, does he plan to schedule one for his final week in office?
So I don't have anything to preview right now at this moment. As you know, as you just mentioned, the president took questions today. He took questions yesterday. He's going to certainly continue to engage with all of you by taking your questions, as he's done multiple times recently. I don't have anything to preview about a press conference. Go ahead, Mary.
Do you or does the administration have any response to Donald Trump's sentencing earlier today?
So, look, we're going to focus, as one of the reasons we had Administrator Criswell in the room, as you all know, and you guys have done a very good job, certainly some of your colleagues who are out there on the ground, covering this disastrous, catastrophic fire. And so the president wants to continue to focus on that. That's what we want to continue to focus on. We're not focused on what occurred today, certainly with the court decision. We are, and we've been saying this, I know it's probably ad nauseum, we've been saying this, that we are running through the tape, and I think we have proven that almost every day. Certainly in 2025, we've been pretty busy. And so that's going to be our focus. What can we do to continue to deliver for the American people? What can we do to make the lives of the American people better? And that is our focus, not going to speak to the decisions made in the court today.
Okay. Two questions, Karine. One on Meta. Meta made a decision this week about doing away with its fact-checking for Facebook and its other platforms. Does the White House have a reaction to that?
So we've been pretty consistent here over the last 4 years. When any corporation or company makes a decision, a private company, to be more specific, makes a decision, we just are not going to comment. So I'm not going to comment on this. And so just going to leave it in that realm. But look, social media, I'll say this, social media companies make their own rules about content moderation. But with that said, we have been outspoken about our belief that the social media companies have an important role to play in enforcing their own rules to prevent the spread of misinformation. That is a responsibility that company has, and we've always been pretty clear about that. But speaking specifically to an announcement, we're just not going to comment on that.
I mean, I understand, but that is something that you guys have been outspoken about, and they're making a change on it. So
Yeah, but
I
we've
guess
all-
it's something I thought maybe you would want to comment
No,
on.
I mean, look, we talk about social media companies having a responsibility. We've always said that. We've all been really clear about that. We've also been clear that policy decisions that are made by private companies, we're not going to speak to those specific in announcement, but we can speak broadly on our belief and how we see their responsibility. And that's as far as that we've always gone, and we're not going to go beyond that.
I just briefly on another topic with regard to the Russia sanctions that were announced today. Does the president, does the White House have any concern that that could lead to an increase in gas prices for consumers?
So look, we took aim today in your question at Russia's largest resources of revenue and imposed significant sanctions on the Russian energy sector. These sanctions certainly target both Russian oil and LNG, and we expect our actions to cost Russia upwards to billions of dollars per month. And so that's important to note as well. And these also, let's not forget that these are also, these sanctions really continue for us to make good on a commitment that we made, that the president made, and his G7 counterparts made to target Russia's ability to use its energy sector to fund and sustain this war. We've talked about this for some time, and so now the president certainly made good on that commitment. So it's not just us. Obviously, we joined these actions with the UK, which imposed significant and complementary actions of its own. And so I think it is important to note that, by taking these significant actions against Russia, the oil markets are in fundamentally better place. That's number one. And number two, the U.S. economy is a fundamentally better place as well. And so that's why we took this action now. This is a commitment that the president wanted to uphold, not just the president, but also the G7, his G7 counterparts, and that's what you're seeing right now.
But my question was whether you're concerned that it will lead to an increase in gas prices.
I mean, look, I've said, look, one of the things that we expect and we believe is that the supply of energy is going to exceed global demand through this year with ample capacity within the outside of OPEC Plus to increase production if necessary. So since the start of Russia's war, benchmark oil prices have fallen almost $35 per barrel, and average U.S. gasoline prices have dropped from roughly $4 to just $3 per gallon. That's because of the actions that this president has taken. And so that is what we want to continue to see. And so that's what we also think will continue to be. Like the gas prices, we believe the gas prices will continue to be where it is and continue to go down because of the actions that the president has taken. Okay.
President Biden was expected to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky when he was in Rome today. Is he planning to speak with him?
So the president did speak to President Zelensky moments ago. We will have a readout for all of you. Obviously, the president wanted to reach out to President Zelensky because, as you just stated, they were supposed to meet in Rome. It did not happen because the president decided to stay and be back here because of the catastrophic fires, obviously, that we're seeing in Southern California. So the president decided to stay back, but they did have a conversation. They spoke moments ago, and so I know the team, before I came out here, was going to work on a readout, and so we'll have that out to all of you soon.
In his interview with the USA Today earlier this week, the president talked a bit about preemptive pardons, saying that they are still potentially on the table. Can you speak a little bit about the scope that he is considering when it comes to that? And if he's any closer to it.
So we have been saying that the president will have more to say, more to announce on pardons and commutations. So that is, we have 10 days to go. So certainly that will be very soon that we'll make those announcements. I'm not going to get into the scope. I'm not going to get ahead of the president, but we will be making some more additional announcements on pardons and commutations before the end of his term. Okay.
You mentioned the president spoke with Zelensky, but is he also going to have a conversation with the Pope? I know he was also supposed to meet with him.
Yeah.
Or is there any thought that the Rome trip could sort of reemerge in the final 10 days?
I don't have anything to say, to add or to announce about a change in schedule. What I can say is, I just mentioned that he spoke to President Zelensky. He wanted to share with the president our continued support for Ukraine, which you've seen over the past 3 years. And so that was a part of their conversation. As it relates to the Pope, I don't have anything to announce about a conversation with the Pope. And so if we have anything to share, we certainly will share with that with all of you. Kelly.
Has the president received any updated information about the status of his son's home in California? Also, his granddaughter lives there now. He did make some reference to seeing some pictures. I wasn't quite certain I heard it correctly, related to Secret Service being burned out. Can you give us an update on anything that relates to the family?
So what I can say, Secret Service, you would have to reach out to the Secret Service for them to speak to any developments and what has occurred with them. As it relates to the president and his son, I don't have anything else to add beyond what the president shared. Just don't have anything at this time.
Is he inquiring and getting any on-the-ground information related to
I
that?
don't have anything to share. What I can say is that when it relates to Secret Service, certainly you have to reach out to the Secret Service. But obviously, he's in close touch with his son and his family.
Because he referenced that, and they would only be present if protectees were at issue, and they would be connected to the president. So that's why I'm asking if he's getting any update on anything related to that.
Well, again, I don't have anything else to add to what the president shared. As it relates to Secret Service and protectees and what they're doing specifically, you would have to reach out to the Secret Service, and we've been pretty consistent on that.
And did he have any opportunity at all to speak to the president-elect about the fires? And they were obviously briefly in the same place yesterday with the Carter funeral and so forth. Does he see a need to, I know there's a full transition operation.
I was going to say, there's a full transition operation.
Fully
You
aware
heard
of that,
you
but,
heard the administrator talk about their kind of process on that side as it relates to FEMA. Don't have a conversation to read out that the president had with the president-elect. But as you said, there's a transition happening. We want it to be effective. We want to make sure that they have what they need. And so that continues.
And one last one.
Yeah.
As a part of transition, is an office of the former president also being stood up, and would that be in Delaware, presumably?
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about location, but the protocols that normally occur when a president leaves his post, it's going to continue. I don't have a location for you. Okay.
And just briefly, we talked about the president's family being affected by this. The vice president's home was also under an evacuation order. Any update there on her home?
Yeah,
in the Los
I mean,
Angeles area?
it's devastating. This is her city, her neighborhood, and her state. I would have to refer you to the vice president's office on any updates that they might share with you. I don't have anything for you at this time, but certainly it's devastating. So many people are affected by this, and it's heartbreaking.
Just a quick follow-up. Will she travel to the Los Angeles area this weekend? Is there any travel plan for her?
I would refer you to the vice president's office on any travel or her schedule.
One more.
Yeah,
One
sure.
quick one, I promise. So we talk about the transition. Have you hosted any conversations with your immediate successor? And when will your final briefing take place?
I'm sure you guys are all very excited about that.
No, I'm just
So I have not had a discussion with my successor. I'm letting the transition team kind of manage that process and just doing my job, focusing on my job on behalf of the president. And we will have a briefing next week, and certainly we will share that with all of you to say goodbye. All right. Go ahead.
Hi, Karine. A couple of topics, if you don't mind. First, on Venezuela, you mentioned the sanctions that the administration is putting on Venezuela in its final 10 days. Are you in discussions with the incoming administration about policy towards Venezuela, and are you expecting those sanctions to hold once Trump does take office?
And so, look, I can't speak to what the next administration is going to do or not do. What I can say is, and I believe Jake Sullivan talked about this when the National Security Advisor talked about this a couple times, whether in a gaggle here at the podium, saying that they are in constant communication with their incoming counterparts, the NSC is. And so I'm sure those conversations are happening on that side of things with the transitioning. I can't speak to what the next administration is going to do or not do, but we are in constant communication with the transition team here is in constant communication with their transition. Well, their transition team is in constant communication with our folks here.
Just another one on Havana syndrome and AHIs. there's been a slight shift in the intelligence community assessment surrounding this phenomenon.
Yeah.
Does the White House believe that this is because of foreign actors? It's happening because of foreign actors?
So look, we put out a statement on this, so I would certainly refer you to the statement that came out from my colleague out of the National Security Council. What I will say is the intelligence community assessment is one element of an interdisciplinary approach this administration has taken to getting to the bottom of these incidents. We believe it's important to do so and ensuring our colleagues receive the support and care they need and that they deserve. So the IC's updated assessment is a product of ongoing analysis. That's basically what is stated in our statement, to make sure that we continue those efforts, which we welcome and which only reinforce why it is vital for the U.S. government to continue critical research, investigate credible incidents, and provide care. So they're an ongoing process, and so that is part of what certainly our statement stated, and also what the ICA said as well.
I read that statement from
Yep.
Sean earlier, and
Yep.
part of it said that the current administration will be briefing the incoming administration about this to continue that work. What does that kind of briefing process look like, and what does it involve?
I mean, look, I'm not going to get into private discussions or conversations. Obviously, this is a intelligence community situation, so I'm going to leave it in their, certainly in their hands. So I'm not going to divulge or get into what those conversations will look like. But like I've said multiple times, we are certainly keeping the transition team up to date on matters that are important, certainly to our national security, but to the American people.
That's great.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Josh.
The Supreme Court indicated today that it will allow the TikTok ban or divestment ruling to proceed with the deadline of January 19th. Does the administration have a position on whether that should happen? Of course, the incoming administration, he's changed his view.
So, look, we've been very clear about our position. Obviously, the president signed the bill, and we believe it's not a ban, it's a divestment, and obviously there are provisions in that on how to move forward. It's in the courts. We've allowed that process to play out. I don't have anything else to add beyond that.
Divestment happened in 9 days. I mean, it seems like it's door number one at this point.
I mean, look, we've been very clear where we stand on this. 9-10 days. I would certainly leave it up to TikTok to speak to that.
Going back to the Russia sanctions, can you walk us through the thought process on this? Is this, the President-elect has obviously made clear his desire for some sort of deal to end the fighting.
Yep.
Is this trying to set the table for that by ratcheting up pressure on Russia? Another way of asking that is, why not do this earlier than now?
I mean, look, this is, as I stated, this is a commitment that was made by the president and the G7 counterparts, his G7 counterparts, and we've always said that we were going to find ways to put pressure on Russia. We've always said that it is up to Russia to end this war. They can do it today. And we've been, I think, pretty clear on that. This is not the first sanctions. We've done multiple sanctions over the past almost 3 years as this war has gone on. And so this was, it wasn't just us. This was also in coordination with our allies and partners. And so that's what you saw. You saw UK make an announcement as well. But we've been clear. We've been clear that we were going to take actions, and so that's what you see from this administration. But this is not the first one, right? We've done multiple, as I just stated, actions before, and we want to make sure that we hold Russia accountable here.
But by definition, you made the choice not to do these specific actions, which are pretty significant.
Yeah, they are
for
significant.
For a
You're
couple of years. So why not?
And, again,
why didn't you do it a year ago? Why now? What changed?
And again, in my answer to you just moments ago, it's not just us. This is also being done with our G7 counterparts. This is essentially a group effort, and that's what you're seeing today.
Okay.
I know I have to. Go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. Do you have updates on the American citizens that are being detained in Venezuela? The Maduro government claims one of them is an FBI agent, if you can confirm.
So I don't have any updates for you at this time. I certainly would refer you to the State Department. Look, when it comes to Americans being held hostage, wrongfully detained. You have seen from this administration our efforts to make sure that we get Americans home. I think we have shown some success in doing that, and that is going to continue to be our commitment, even though we have 9-10 days left. I don't have an update on this particular individual. I certainly would refer you to the State Department.
And one more, if we can get a reaction on Indonesia becoming a full member of BRICS. Indonesia is obviously Southeast Asia's largest economy that could lend credibility to BRICS' ambition to become the alternative to the G7, particularly as we head into the new U.S. administration, which may have a different approach towards multilateral cooperation.
So I don't have anything specific to say about this. I would have to refer you to our National Security Council on that particular question. Okay, Gary.
Thanks, Karine. Meta also reportedly eliminated its DEI programs in hiring, training, and picking suppliers. And they cite the Supreme Court ruling in affirmative action. I know you said that you wouldn't comment on business policies, but the administration really went out of its way to sort of convince businesses not to interpret that ruling as anything that further than that. Is there a disappointment there that companies like Meta and McDonald's, Walmart are rolling back these DEI policies?
So, not going to comment on a specific action that a private company takes, but what I can say is that you've heard from this president, you've heard from this administration, diversity is our greatest strength. You have seen this not just by words, by action that this president has taken, and certainly that is a sentiment you've heard echoed by leaders across businesses and government, not just us, and so that continues to be our stance on this. It is important to have different voices around the table. It's important to have different voices, working on policy to make sure that we are delivering for the American people. And that's what we have done. That's what we have shown. And as it relates to specific companies, I'm just not going to comment on that policy. But I think by our actions and what you have seen us do over the last 4 years, our commitment to that, our commitment to making sure communities that are normally left behind have a voice or not, don't feel like they don't have access, and changing that around. We have done that in many ways, whether it's the economy, whether it's lowering cost on prescription drugs, making sure manufacturing jobs come back, helping for wages to go up. We have done this and shown our commitment to that. Again, I'm not going to speak to any particular company. Yeah, sure.
I recently spoke to Reverend Al Sharpton, and he said that he would like the president to issue a pardon for Baltimore County State Attorney Marilyn Mosby and Jesse Jackson Jr. Can we expect to hear an announcement on any high-profile pardons such as these?
Yeah, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. He's going to make some more announcements or pardons and commutations. Certainly, we've heard from groups out there who have certainly been very vocal about what they think the president should do. The president and his team is working through it. They're trying to figure out the best way forward. Obviously, the president believes in Americans who have shown that they can get a second chance to have that second chance. And I think you've seen that. This is a president that has been pretty historic in his actions in moving forward with pardons and commutations. I'm not going to get ahead of him. Okay, Karen.
Thanks, Karine. Does the president expect that President-elect Trump will be here in the morning before the inauguration? Has that invitation been accepted by the president?
I would refer you to the transition team to speak to what the president-elect is going to do or not do on January 20th.
But he extended the invitation to come here.
That is something that is a tradition, so obviously we are going to try to continue that tradition, but I would have to refer you to his transition team. Karine.
Thanks. I had a few follow-up questions on the transition process. To follow up what Karen was asking, it's also a tradition for the president, incoming president, to stay at Blair House. Is that an invitation that's been extended?
I don't have anything to share on if the president-elect is going to be staying at the Blair House. What I will say is we certainly are trying to continue the traditions here. We want this to be an effective, efficient, peaceful transfer of power. Once we have more to share, certainly would share from our end of things, and anything that's related to the president-elect, I would refer you to the transition team.
And then we've seen some moving trucks out here today. Can you talk about where you guys are physically in the process? And have there been any directives? Because I know in the past with the other administration, there's been issues with classified documents and mix-ups, and I know you guys have said you want to be careful and follow the rules. So
We are going to do our best, certainly to be careful, to follow the rules, to do this the right way, to follow traditions, obviously, as the president truly wants to do, as he showed right after the election, having the president-elect in the Oval Office, and putting everything aside and making sure that we were putting the American people first and what they wanted, respecting the results of the election. That's what you've seen from this administration. And we have 9-10 days left, and we're trying to run through the tape, do everything that we can, and get out of here in time on January 20th. Good.
Speaking of the days left, Monday the president's going to deliver this capstone speech on foreign policy at the State Department. I just wanted to sort of see what you could share from a preview. Is this sort of a defense of his foreign policy? Is it a warning to allies, or advice that he wants to give the incoming administration? How should we kind of view the speech that the president's going to give?
Well, as I've stated many times already at the podium, as it relates to the pardon commutation, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. And so he wanted to make the speech. There has been, there has been some key events, obviously, that has happened across the globe in his tenure. And this is someone who has been, when it comes to foreign policy, that is something that has been a key pillar of who he is and how in his career. And let's not forget, 50+ years as a public official, elected official. And so he has some thoughts on the future, not just of the country, but how this country moves forward as a leader when you think about global events, important global issues. And certainly he will lay that out. I don't want to get ahead of him. But you could reassure there are major events happening right now. The Russia's war in Ukraine, the Middle East, and many other Indo-Pacific, many other important matters that he's going to certainly lean into. But I don't want to get ahead of the president. All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Any reaction to the Title IX ruling, Karine?
Oh, wow. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. So much excitement. I know it's the Fed chair meeting, right? I know. Yeah, Bloomberg. Dees, I mean, yeah. Forget about me. I know, it's not about me. Okay, so today on the final day of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I'm excited to welcome some special guests to the briefing room today, pop phenoms BTS. Woohoo! While many of you may know BTS as Grammy-nominated international icons, they also play an important role as youth ambassadors, promoting a message of respect and positivity. After this briefing, they will join President Biden in a discussion about Asian inclusion, representation, and diversity, as well as addressing an anti-Asian hate crimes and discrimination. As many of you know, the president has led a historic whole-of-government approach to combat racism, xenophobia, and intolerance facing ANHPI communities. Beginning his first week in office, when he issued a presidential memorandum leveraging the power of the federal government to stand against this hate. The president also signed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act into law, signed an executive order to reestablish the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and funded critical research to prevent and address xenophobia against AA and NHPI communities. So without further ado, I will let the band take it from here. They're gonna each speak. We have a interpreter somewhere here. There you go. Good to see you. So they'll each speak first, and then the interpreter will come back up and interpret what they just said. They're not going to take any questions. They're just going to come here and give some words, and then we'll start the briefing. Thank you. Go ahead, Jess.
Thank you, Karine, for your kind words. And hi, we're BTS. and it is a great honor to be invited to the White House today to discuss the important issues of anti-Asian hate crimes, Asian inclusion, and diversity.
네, 오늘은 AANHPI 헤리티지 먼스의 마지막 날입니다. 저희는 AANHPI 커뮤니티와 뜻을 함께하고 기념하기 위해 오늘 백악관에 왔습니다.
네, 최근 아시아계를 대상으로 한 많은 증오 범죄에 굉장히 놀랍고 또 마음이 안 좋았는데요. 이런 일이 근절되는데 조금이라도 도움이 되고자 오늘 이 자리를 빌어 목소리를 내고자 합니다.
네, 오늘 저희가 이 자리에 올 수 있었던 것은 저희의 음악을 사랑해 주시는 다양한 국적, 언어, 문화를 가진 저희의 팬, 아미 여러분들이 계셨기에 이 자리에 올 수 있었다고 생각합니다. 정말 감사합니다.
네, 한국인의 음악이 서로 다른 언어와 문화를 넘어서 전 세계 많은 분들께 닿을 수 있다는 게 아직까지도 좀 신기하고 근데 신기한 것 같습니다. 그리고 이 모든 걸 연결을 시켜주는 음악이란 건 좀 참으로 훌륭한 매개체가 아닌가 싶습니다.
나와 다르다고 그것은 잘못된 일이 아닙니다. 옳고 그름이 아닌 다름을 인정하는 것으로부터 평등은 시작된다고 생각합니다.
네, 우리는 모두의 각자의 역사를 가지고 있습니다. 오늘 한 사람 한 사람이 의미 있는 존재로서 서로 존중하고 이해하기 위한 또 한 걸음이 되기를 바랍니다.
And lastly, we thank President Biden and the White House for giving this important opportunity to speak about the important causes, remind ourselves of what we can do as artists. Once again, thank you very much.
Provide an interpretation in Korean and English. 우리말과 영어로 통역 간략하게 전달드리겠습니다. 남준 씨는 친절한 소개 감사합니다. 방탄소년단입니다. 오늘 백악관에 초청받아서 반아시아계 혐오 범죄 그리고 아시아계 포용 그리고 다양성에 대해 논의하는 자리를 가지게 되어 정말 큰 영광입니다. Jun said today is the last day of the AANHPI Heritage Month. We joined the White House to stand with the AANHPI community and to celebrate. Jimmy said we were devastated by the recent surge of hate crimes, including Asian American hate crimes. To put a stop on this and support the cause, we'd like to take this opportunity to voice ourselves once again. Job said we are here today thanks to our army, our fans worldwide, who have different nationalities and cultures and use different languages. We are truly and always grateful. Jungkook said we still feel surprised that music created by South Korean artists reaches so many people around the world, transcending languages and cultural barriers. We believe music is always an amazing and wonderful unifier of all things. Shiga said it's not wrong to be different. I think equality begins when we open up and embrace all of our differences. V said everyone has their own history. We hope today is one step forward to respecting and understanding each and every one as a valuable person. 마지막으로 남준 씨가 중요한 문제에 대해 함께 이야기하고 우리가 아티스트로서 무엇을 할 수 있는지 생각할 기회를 만들어 주신 바이든 대통령님과 백악관에 감사드립니다. 감사합니다.
What does it mean to you to come to the White House?
We're gonna go. They're not gonna take any questions, but thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
BTS 화이팅!
감사합니다. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Oh. All right. Okay. Yeah. Brian, I don't know how you're gonna. Okay. I don't know. I'm excited to hear what Brian has to say. Okay. Next up, we have Brian Deese, our Director of National Economic Council, who just came out of the meeting with the President and the Fed Chair and Secretary Yellen. And so he is joining us today. So thank you, Brian, for making the time.
Okay. So I get to go home and tell my kids that BTS opened for me. I did not expect that when I woke up this morning. And I know that you're all here to talk about trimmed mean inflation, and you're as excited about that as you are for them. So Thank you for hanging in here. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context to the economic focus of the day. As you all know, the President just concluded a meeting with Chair Powell, along with Secretary Yellen and myself. It was a very constructive meeting focused on the outlook for the U.S. and the global economy. And I won't go into detail of the private meeting other than to reinforce that the President underscored to Chair Powell in the meeting what he has underscored consistently, including today, that he respects the independence of the Federal Reserve and will provide the Federal Reserve the space and the independence that it needs to tackle inflation. Also today, the President published a op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and I will just give you a little bit of context for that piece and how we are thinking about economic priorities here. So 4 quick points. The first point is there is no question that the global economy right now faces a range of significant challenges. Inflation is first among them. It is a global challenge. We learned, for example, today that inflation in the euro area hit an annual rate of 8.1%. And it is a challenge that the President understands is hitting American families and creating anxiety and also economic hardship. As he said, he gets this. The second point is that as the President is making fighting inflation his top economic priority, it is really important that we recognize that we can take on inflation from a position of relative economic strength. That is true if we look in the global context. Few countries are better positioned than the United States to make this transition and navigate this transition that the President talked about today from historically strong recovery to more stable, resilient growth. If you look, the reason why we have those economic strengths is the strength of our recovery, the historically unique strength of our recovery. At the center of that is the labor market. You all know the statistics. I won't belabor them, but suffice it to say we have the strongest labor market in modern history, which is not only creating job opportunities to move into new careers with better pay for millions of Americans, but it is also pulling more people into the labor force. And in fact, we've seen the most rapid labor force participation rebound among prime age workers of any of the last 4 recoveries. And we're also seeing that in terms of the strength of household balance sheets as well. Savings is up, debt is down, bankruptcy filings remain near pre-pandemic lows. Eviction filings are 30% below their pre-pandemic levels. All of these are sources of economic strength from which we can now focus on bringing prices down. The third point, this was an important piece of this, which is that the President's talking about this transition and growth. As we move through this transition, our economic growth should look different than it has in the historic recovery phase. We've run this first leg of the race at a very rapid clip. That has put us in this strong position relative to our peers. But this is a marathon, and we have to move and shift to stable, resilient growth. And that's why the President's outlining the plan that he wrote about today, which is something that he has been focused on here for some time now. Core to that are the 3 elements that he flagged. The first is nominating quality people to the Federal Reserve. He has done that. He got an opportunity to speak with Chair Powell today. Strong, incredibly credentialed bipartisan group. And we are hopeful that the Senate will move to confirm the last of his nominees, Michael Barr, without delay, and giving the Fed the independence to operate, which is critically important, particularly at a moment where inflation is elevated, but cannot be taken for granted, which is why the president is reinforcing it publicly today. The second is lowering costs. How can we make things more affordable for typical families during this transition period? And the third is lowering the federal deficit, which will help to ease price pressures in the economy. That is, on those second and third, that is the focus, the president's economic focus, the focus of our economic team. Many things, many of the steps therein are things that we can do on our own with executive action. There are also places where we need Congress's help and to work with Congress. But that is our overarching focus when it comes to the economy right now. So that is the context I want to provide. Happy to do whatever Karine tells me to do.
Brian, one thing that one trade-off to fighting inflation may be a change in the unemployment levels. What level of increase in unemployment does the White House see as acceptable in order to obtain lower inflation?
Well, I think that one of the things about this transition, and we are in this transition, one of the things about having the strength of the labor market recovery that we have had to date is that we are uniquely well positioned to actually move toward more stable labor market gains or gains more consistent with periods where we have had this level of unemployment in the past. And we can actually take on inflation without having to sacrifice all of those gains. And so you see that, for example, in the high rate of available jobs per worker. That can, and you've seen that start to moderate somewhat. So one of the ways that, for example, businesses can reduce their demand if that is necessary is to bring down the number of open jobs they have available. But that is, I think that the bottom line is we have a very strong labor market, and that is not only a source of strength for millions of people who are getting jobs or getting jobs at higher wages. It has helped to strengthen household and family balance sheets as well. So part of the reason why we have seen savings elevated and we have seen credit card payments and other debt service payments come down to historically low levels is because of the strength of the labor market. So that positions us relatively well going into this period of transition.
Just one follow-up. The president emphasized, and you just emphasized, his respect for the Fed's independence. Is he happy with what the Fed is doing?
Consistent with respecting their independence is respecting their independence. So what I would say is that he has confidence in the people that he has nominated. He is grateful to the Senate to confirming 4 of his 5 nominees, and he is focused on actually giving them the space to make those independent judgments. It certainly is the case that the president has identified inflation as his top economic priority, and he agrees with the assessment that the team at the Federal Reserve is making and that Chair Powell is making as well. But part of providing that independence is to stay out of the business of commenting on tactics, timing, or otherwise on the monetary policy side. So you can expect that from us going forward.
Okay. A follow on that. If he's confident in the team that he's put there, is he confident that they will be able to deal with this enormous challenge, which is taming inflation and not putting the economy into a recession?
Well, I think that what the president is and what we are very confident in is that we can approach this challenge and we can focus our efforts on bringing inflation down without having to sacrifice all of the economic gains that we've made because of the unique position of strength that we are in. Because of the progress that we have made over the course of the last 15 months, we are now uniquely well positioned to do that.
Does the president think that the Fed needs to revise or review its modeling and forecasting techniques, given they pretty badly misjudged that inflation was not actually transitory?
That falls squarely into the category of things that we will leave to the independent judgment of the Fed.
Phil in the back and then Kelly in the back.
Thank you, sir. You noted that inflation remains the president's top priority. I'm wondering a little bit about the intersection of that priority and the president's plan to forgive as much as $10,000 in student debt relief for families making as much as $300,000. Some analysis says that this would cost taxpayers as much as $250 billion, and of course that money's not going to be dumped into the economy all at once, but I'm curious how you see this affecting consumer spending, because presumably some of these folks, rather than servicing their loans, might go buy a new phone or decide to buy that car or go on the vacation. So are you confident that that student debt relief program would not have a negative impact on inflation?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple things of that. The first is that notwithstanding some of the reporting, the president hasn't made any decision on that policy, and so I won't get ahead of any decision or any particular program or plan that has been speculated about. Broadly speaking, if you look at those who hold student debt, principally people who went to public colleges, principally people who, when they were going to college, had 2/3 of which their family income was less than $50,000 per year, and many of whom are struggling economically in a position of having to repay that debt. When you look at the question of the macroeconomic impact, I would say two things. One is it is a function of a number of those policy design parameters, including the repayment. So today there is a moratorium on repayment of student loans, and so the resumption of payments would interact with any potential debt cancellation from a macroeconomic perspective, number one. And number two, if you look at the impact of almost any proposal, because of the point that you made, notwithstanding the cost of any proposal is the economic impact of any proposal would be across the course of years or a couple of decades, and so the impact on inflation in the near term is likely to be quite small. But again, because the president hasn't made any decision, and we're not talking about a specific plan, I won't speculate specifically, but I think most of the analysis suggests that the near-term impact would be pretty small.
As you're putting together sort of this outreach today with the op-ed, with the message that you and other colleagues have been putting out there, is implicit in that sort of acknowledgement that you have not been telling the story of the economic picture in a way that has been satisfactory to the president?
I think what this underscores is actually an ongoing commitment by the president to both train his focus on what is the most important thing for the economy and to communicate that as well. So I would point you back to the President's State of the Union, where the president said that my priority is lowering costs and lowering the deficit. And I think what this president has tried to do in every stage in this historic and unique economic recovery is to effectively communicate to the American people where we are, to give it to people straight, but also to lay out clearly his plans, his priorities in terms of what he wants to see done. And so we are now moving into a phase which is really a transition, that transition that he spoke about. And so what he has been doing for the last couple of weeks, what he will continue to do is try to help make sure that we're communicating clearly to the American people what that means and also what his plans are, and also that he is prepared to work with anybody, Democrat and Republican, to try to make progress on that, but also highlight that there are differences between his approach and others, and that's important for the American people to understand as well.
What is the expectation today as you advise the president, or his expectation about how long prices will be at these high levels, 40-year levels, how long inflation will be here?
Well, there is uncertainty, and I will leave the predictions to forecasters. I think you and others have seen most major forecasters out there in their projections, most projecting that we will see moderation in inflation over the course of the year. What I can say and is important with respect to, for example, the op-ed that the president wrote today, is that the president has a clear approach and priorities with respect to tackling inflation. And the more progress that we can make on that plan, the more progress that we can make in lowering costs and making things more affordable for families right now, the more progress we can make in building on the historic deficit reduction we've already seen this year, then the better off we'll be, the better positioned we'll be to actually see that moderation happen more quickly. So that's our focus. Our focus when we're thinking about policy, particularly fiscal policy, is how can we make more progress on that front, understanding that there are a lot of predictions out there.
Just a couple more, Josh.
Thanks, Brian. Chair Powell has said there are limited tools that the Fed has to deal with supply shocks, like what we saw from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the lockdowns in China over the coronavirus. Given that limitation, do you believe the U.S. is well insulated and protected against future supply shocks that could cause prices to rise, as we've seen with gasoline? Or do you think additional action is needed with Congress in order to provide that protection?
Well, I would say a couple things. The first point that I made and underscored is we do face serious global challenges right now. And the supply chain disruptions, the ongoing supply chain disruptions emanating from COVID and China most recently are significant. Likewise, the implications on the energy market of Russia's invasion of Ukraine are significant and ongoing. And so absolutely, those are significant global challenges. They are affecting energy prices and food prices globally. They are affecting supply chain distribution systems globally. That is point one. Point two is we in the United States are better positioned to actually navigate through those challenges than almost any other country, in part because of as I've said already, the strength of our economic recovery, in part also because of the work that we have done, for example, on the supply chain side over the last 9 months of consistent, focused effort working with all different parts of our supply chain. We now see, for example, the fluidity, what's known as, how fast containers can move through ports, for example, and get from a ship all the way to the end, that we have seen significant improvements in that fluidity across time, which puts us in a better position to navigate potential new supply shocks, but they pose ongoing challenges. Third, there are places where we could absolutely use Congress's help, and we could use it urgently. And so when you think about some of the core challenges we have with respect to supply chains, they circle back to the issue of semiconductors. And we remain extremely vulnerable to the supply chain fragilities associated with semiconductors. Notwithstanding everything we have been through in this pandemic crisis, we still don't have a dedicated supply chain office within the federal government that is funded adequately to actually take on, map, and aggressively go at these challenges. Now, we've made historic progress notwithstanding that, but we could use Congress moving to provide the resources and the funding and the authorities that are in the bipartisan innovation bill that is now in conference. So that's one place where we are hopeful, working very closely with Congress in an effort to try to get that done, and that would give us more tools to keep building our resilience to these types of global shocks.
Josh, Catherine, and
Thank you. Since you were in the meeting, can you say whether the president expressed any view about what the Fed's path is right now? Chair Powell has talked about 50 basis points each in the next 2 meetings. Did President Biden weigh in at all on whether he thinks the Fed needs to go faster, slower, just about right at all in the meeting?
So I'm not going to read out any specific components of the meeting other than to underscore that the president did in private, as he did in public, underscore that his commitment to giving the Fed the space to conduct monetary policy independently without political interference.
Do you think that the Fed has moved too slowly by saying it's their responsibility? The implication, of course, is that they're holding the bag to the fact that inflation is at the highs that it is at.
I think by saying it's their responsibility, what the president is doing is acknowledging and underscoring the pivotal role that the Fed plays institutionally, and that monetary policy plays in the process of bringing prices down. That's a core mandate that the Fed has, and that he not only respects, but is willing to underwrite. That independence matters, and being insulated from political interference matters. That's not an approach that the previous president took to this issue. It has not been an approach that presidents in the past have taken, and this president has underscored and is underscoring that he will do that. And I think that that's what you should take away from his acknowledgement of the responsibility that the Fed has.
And the tariff reviews come up at all, or can you give us the latest on that? The recalls, of course, that easing tariffs on imports from particular countries could be one measure that would cool inflation here in the U.S.
I know it's an issue in discussion. I don't have any update to share today.
Just following up on Josh's question on tariffs, is there any timing you can give us on a decision specifically on the China tariffs?
Nothing specific on tariffs today.
I wanted to ask you about budget reconciliation.
About the what?
Budget reconciliation. What do you view as the right revenue to spending ratio to combat inflation?
Well, I think what the president has said and is underscoring today is that we have a real opportunity to lower costs and lower the deficit. And that we can actually do those two things together in a way that will create a more competitive economic environment and actually increase incentives for businesses to invest in the United States by pairing tax reform with measures to lower costs for families. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of the conversations around reconciliation other than to say the president really does believe that the right approach here is to focus on measures that would lower costs and help to make things more affordable right now for families and to lower the deficit. And that he believes that that's the right way to address inflation, and that's probably the most significant thing that Congress could do right now to actually help to accelerate the process of bringing prices down, to Kelly's point.
Last question.
About a year ago, you stood here at the podium along with other officials talking about inflation as transitory. Now a lot of the focus from the White House and the broader administration is on messaging, as Caitlin and Kelly pointed out earlier. Was it a mistake to use that phrasing, and do you think it gave Americans a false sense of how long these rising prices would be here for?
Look, I think that this has been an uncertain and unexpected and recovery period, historic in many ways. And so I think that our focus right now is on what is the right policy to bring prices down without sacrificing all of the economic gains that we have made. And I think that one thing that is unambiguously the case is that over the course of this 15 months, the strength of this recovery that we have had in the United States has not only helped millions of people and millions of families across the country, but now positions us well to address what is a global issue. And when you look out across the world right now, there's also no question that inflation is a global challenge. The 8.1% figure that I cited for the euro area, if you look back over the last 6 months, headline euro area inflation is 9%. And that is because we know that principally the drivers of that are the convulsions and the convulsive impact of having to shut the economy down and restart the economy, and compounded now by the supply effects that Josh asked about with respect to Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So that's our focus. That's where we're focused now. And we think that the policy choices that we make here going forward will be consequential in how quickly and effectively we can navigate through this next period.
But that talks mostly about the structural factors. I guess when you talk to Americans, when you look at polling, they say their biggest concern is rising prices, which I think part of that stems from the prolonged period that we've been in. And so I'm wondering, as you focus on the messaging, have you learned lessons from that, where you discussed it as transitory, and now, 15 months later, we're still here?
Look, I think that what the president has done with respect to communications has been to consistently explain to the American people where we are and where we need to go, and that continues to be the way that he approaches this issue, and very much from the perspective of what it feels like to sit around a dining room table or a kitchen table in this country, because that's his lived experience, and that's the way that he approaches these economic policy questions. And so he understands that right now the top issue on people's minds is prices at the gas station, prices at the grocery store. And he's made very clear, and he's communicating very clearly that that's his top economic priority, and that we can address this from a position of strength, and that we can make this transition to stable growth without sacrificing all of those gains if we make the right decisions going forward. And so that's what he will continue to do. It's certainly what we'll continue to do in serving him.
Brian, if I could quickly follow up, the president is communicating effectively. How do you explain and make sense of his low poll numbers?
Look, I will just say this, that the president always tasks us to focus on what are the right policy decisions and the right policy choices to try to advance an economy that has been his animating feature of what he wants to get done for years, which is how do you build an economy from the bottom up, the middle out, where working families have more opportunities. We've made historic progress in that direction. We have made historic progress in that direction because of some of the hard and difficult policy choices that this president has made. But we now have to address this issue of rising prices. The president has been focused on that for some time. We need some help in working with Congress on some of the issues that we just discussed. And I think that, if we can deliver, I think what the American people are mostly want to see is that we can actually move the ball forward, and that we can actually make some progress in things that matter in their daily lives. And it's why you've seen the president so focused on things like reducing the cost of internet, building more affordable housing to reduce the cost of housing, because we get that those are practical things that are impacting people in their lives. And the more progress we can make on that front, that's what people want to see. That's what people want to see is progress. And so that's where we're going to keep our focus.
Why is the president so hesitant to face us from behind the podium just like you did?
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Come back soon. All right, that's all I have on for the topper. Oh, we could no. Go ahead, Josh. Why don't you kick us off here?
Great. Thanks. Just 1 sec. 2 subjects. First, could you offer some clarity on what President Biden meant when he said we're not sending Ukraine rocket systems that could strike into Russia, since even short-range missiles could fly over the border if they're fired nearby? And is the White House concerned that sending a rocket system could be considered escalatory?
So let me first say that those systems continue to be under consideration, so I don't have anything to preview on anything specific there. But as the president said, we won't be sending long-range rockets for use beyond the battlefield in Ukraine. But right now, I don't have anything to preview for you today.
Secondly, could you update us on the status of where Mexico's president stands on going to the Summit of Americas? It's the first time we've hosted since 1994, and what does this controversy say about the U.S. relationship with Mexico?
So, I don't have anything to share or anything to confirm about anyone's attendance. We don't have a final list. Once we have a final list, we'll be sharing that. Look, the president is looking forward to hosting, as you just said, the first one in a long time. It's the 9th Summit of the Americas in June, just a few days away, and values the opportunity for leader-to-leader, civil society and private sector engagement to advance our goals and find common ground. He views the summit as an important opportunity for leaders and key stakeholders to come together to address the core challenges facing the people of the hemisphere. No other part of the world impacts the security and prosperity of the United States more directly than the Western Hemisphere, and we are joined not just by geography, but also by economic ties, democratic principles, cultural connections, and familial bonds. I don't have a list to confirm or any invites or decisions that's been made. That's up to clearly the individual leaders.
Hello.
Hello.
Happy Tuesday.
I feel like it's been a long time.
Just to follow up on that, has everyone who's going to be invited to the summit been invited?
We're still working through some of the invites. We just don't have a final list. And we have said, once we have a final list, we'll share that.
Can you elaborate on the president's promise earlier today to meet with lawmakers on new gun laws? When or how that would happen, and whether there are any preconditions on when or how he'd meet with them?
So the president is look, he's been calling for action for some time. What we have seen, in particular, these past 2 weeks with these mass shootings in Buffalo, and we saw the president go to Buffalo and grieve with the family there. We saw the president and the first lady just this past Sunday go to Texas to grieve with the parents there. And it is heart-wrenching what we're experiencing. This is an epidemic, the gun violence that we're seeing across the country, and we have to do something, and we have to continue to make efforts to act, to protect our kids, to protect people going to the grocery store. The president has made this one of his priorities from the first day that he walked into this administration, and now he's calling on Congress to act. And so he is hopeful. He wants to make sure there's action. The White House, we have our White House team that is in constant communication with Congress on an array of issues, including this one, because again, this is a priority, and he wants to continue to make sure that he continues to voice his concern and what needs to be done next. Look, the president has done everything that he can from the federal government. We are looking at other executive actions that we can possibly do. This president has done more executive actions at this point than any other president, but it's not up to him alone. He cannot do this alone. This is what you heard him say to Kelly O yesterday. And so Congress needs to act so we can have federal law legislation on the books so we can stop this epidemic that we're seeing across the country.
What other executive actions would be under consideration? You just said he's done everything he can do.
Well, we're looking to see what else can be done, to be clear. We have done, as you've heard us say, we have done the ghost guns. The stemming of the flow of ghost guns is something that the president has done through executive action. If you look at ghost guns, they are not regulated. There's no serial number connected to them. They are the weapons of choice when it comes to terrorists and criminals. This is something that we have seen more and more pop up across the country, and so he put out an executive order through the Department of Justice to make sure that we do everything to stem ghost guns being out there. He's taken more efforts to take on gun traffickers and make sure that they are held accountable. He used the American Rescue Plan, which, by the way, no Republican voted for, to make sure that we put police officers back in the streets, who many of them lost their jobs during the COVID pandemic. And so there's $10 billion that we announced that cities have used to make sure that they are using that funding, or said they have used that funding for gun violence. These are the actions that this president has taken. And now he's calling on Congress to take action. He's calling on Congress to take a vote so that we can protect families and communities.
He said, no, nothing's scheduled yet.
I don't have anything more to preview. He said yesterday himself that they are looking at other options on executive actions. But again, he's done more than any president at this time.
One other thing I wanted to just clarify, something he said on Friday during his address at the Naval Academy. The president was born in 1942, graduated from the University of Delaware in 1965. In his address, he said he was appointed to the Naval Academy in 1965. Was he? Was it in 1965?
So I did not hear that part of the speech, so I would have to. Okay, I did. I missed. I hear you, Ed. I hear you. I have not. I need to read it myself and just go back and see what you're talking about exactly. I can't speak to it right now. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. Canada is making it impossible to buy, sell, transfer, or import handguns anywhere in that country. Would President Biden ever consider a similar restriction on handguns here?
So, we'll leave it up to other countries to set their policy on gun ownership. The president has made his position clear. The United States needs to act, as I just laid out. He supports a ban on sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and expanded background checks to keep guns out of the dangerous hands. He does not support a ban on the sale of all handguns, to answer your question.
Okay, thank you. In some places in this country now, a gallon of gas costs more than people on the federal minimum wage are making in an hour. What does the White House want these people to do? To stop driving to work?
Look, the president understands what it feels like. Deese just spoke about this. Brian Deese was just here and talked about how he understands what it means for people who are sitting at their kitchen table and see gas prices go up. He understands that feeling personally, or seeing prices of groceries go up in the grocery store. This is something that he is inherently aware of, and he's doing everything that he can. As Brian Deese was just here, his economic advisor, one of his top economic advisor, laying out what he is planning to do or continue to do to make sure that we lower costs at the gas pump. He also said, Brian also said, that we are dealing with an unprecedented time with global challenges that we have never seen before. And that includes clearly the pandemic, that includes Putin's tax hike that we're seeing this past couple of months, that has had an effect on gasoline prices. $1.50 went up since Putin has amassed his troops on the border of Ukraine. These are real, global issues that has led to this moment. But the president is doing everything that he can to make sure that we address this issue.
And you just mentioned Putin a few times as a reason for recent inflation. Do you guys think that any part of inflation this year is because of President Biden's spending plans, or is it all Putin's fault?
Well, what I can say is we are, and Brian just spoke to this, we are at a historic place when it comes to the economy, when it comes to unemployment being at the lowest that we have seen in some time, when it comes to the president creating more jobs in his first term, his first year, than any other president, more than 8.5 million jobs. Now we're going to a place where we're going into transition, where we're going to see an economy that's more stable, that's more steady. So that's because of the American Rescue Plan that the president signed into law, that no Republican signed or voted for, I should say. And all of that work that he's done the first year has led us to a place where there are more jobs out there, more jobs are being created, that we are in a place where we're seeing economic growth. Now, and also, as I've stated, this is an unprecedented time with COVID. This is an unprecedented time with the war. And so that Putin has created and started on Ukraine. And so we have seen, data has shown us, since these past couple of months, since the war, we have seen an uptick on gas prices.
So I guess the next question would be, does President Biden take any responsibility for his policies potentially contributing to inflation?
His policies has helped the economy get back on its feet. That's what his policies has done. When we talk about the gas prices right now, this is indeed Putin's gas hike. This is what we have seen in the most recent months of what we've seen at the gas pump. And so that is a fact. We have seen about 60% increase in the past several months, and because of the amassing and his invasion of Ukraine. And so the president, his goal right now, and what he is frustrated about, is what the American people have to go through, and what they are trying to deal with as they are around their kitchen table. So that is his focus right now. Go ahead.
The president has talked about understanding from his life experience those difficulties, economic hardships, and so forth. Does he consider it a crisis for American families that prices are at this 40-year high? He understands the hardship that people are going through. He understands how difficult it is for families. He understands that. That's why he has done everything that he can and taken steps in many different ways to make sure that we lower cost. We announced new actions to give farmers the tools and resources they need to boost production and lower food prices and feed the world. High-speed internet for tens of millions of Americans. We announced new steps with the private sector
to lower those prices. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office found that the deficit fell by 1.5 trillion this year, and it actually fell even more in most regions.
Is it a problem? Is it a hardship? Is it a crisis? What is it that people are facing?
It is, we're just in a difficult time right now with this inflation. That's why he's doing everything that he can. Look, his op-ed, he talks about this explicitly, about what he knows the American people are going through. And he laid out what it is that he's going to do to really fight against inflation. So it is something that he is aware of. This is clearly, right, as president, it's something that is a priority to him. That's why he made sure that he rallied allies and partners around the world to release 1 million barrels of oil per day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and that has been something that started for 6 months, in addition to an additional 60 million barrels of oil from other country reserves. That's for gas, to help with gas. The administration has allowed E15, which uses homegrown biofuels, to be sold this summer to help as well. And also he announced administration actions to save hundreds of thousands of families hundreds of dollars per month by fixing the Affordable Care Act's family glitch. So these are the things that he is continuing to work on and make this a priority. And that's why one of the reasons he wanted the American people to hear directly from him, hence the op-ed that came out.
Back on the issue of gun reform, so you mentioned the limitations that the president is facing. He also has
Yeah,
been
he
blunt
said this yesterday himself.
that there's only so much that he can do, that much of this is in the hands of Congress. But in Texas over the weekend, the president came face to face with a crowd that was demanding that he act, chanting, do something. And the president said, we will. Given the limitations that he is facing, how can he make that promise? What makes him so confident that this time around will be different?
So, as I've said, our team is in close contact with key members of Congress on negotiations. And when the president when it's helpful, he will certainly engage. But look, what we're talking about is popular. It's something that the constituents want, right? When you think about 88% support background checks on all gun sales, just 8% oppose. When you think about 84% support a ban on firearm sales to people reported as dangerous to law enforcement, just 9% oppose. 69% of support banning high-capacity magazine, just 22% oppose. 67% oppose banning assault-style weapons, just 25% oppose. This is from a poll last week from Politico Morning Consult. Reuters had a poll as well on that same day. 84% support background checks for all firearm sales. 70% support red flag laws. So these are things that, if you think about the senators and congressional members, these are things that their own constituents support. And so what the president is going to continue to do, as he's done from the first few days that he walked into office, is to ask Congress to act. And so we're going to continue to have those conversations. He's going to do everything that he can to make that happen. We have to stop this gun violence epidemic that we're seeing.
But these measures have been popular for some time. I mean, that's not new to this most recent massacre. So what is the president seeing, if anything, that makes him confident that this time will be different? I mean, we've heard him say that he thinks everyone's getting more rational about this. What has he seen from Republicans that gives him that sense?
Well, right now, as we know, there are bipartisan negotiations happening today. It may have happened already. I know there was supposed to be a Zoom call that was being led by Chris Murphy. And so, it is important. That's what we want to see. We want to see steps being taken so that we can get to a resolution, a solution here. We cannot continue having this epidemic that we're having with gun violence. This is not okay. And what we're asking Congress to do is to vote. Vote again. I just said this. Vote to protect our communities. Vote to protect our children. Vote to protect our teachers. Vote to be able so that people can safely go into a grocery store and not worry about being killed. And so the president's going to continue to speak to this. He's going to continue to use, the platform that he has. But again, he has done more on executive action in his first year than any other president has, in particular at this point.
How would you gauge his level of confidence that vote is actually going to happen?
Look, we're going to continue to try. I can't speak to how people are feeling in Congress. That's something that they have to answer, or where they are with the process. What we're going to do is do our job from here and having those conversations. As I mentioned, his team is talking to folks on the other side about negotiations, and we're going to continue to call for action.
Can we come back to the back? I'm right here.
Thank you so much. I have a BTS question and also a Taiwan question.
A BTS?
Yeah,
Okay.
first of all, they've been here for a few hours, just wondering if they're filming a music video on site or anything
Oh.
like that. And also, any substantive policy recommendations to the president about combating discrimination and hate crime?
Well, right after they were here, they did go to meet with the president. Clearly, I don't know what conversation was had. Usually we try to keep those conversation private. You heard from them directly about how important it was for them to use their platform to be here to talk about issues that matter to them, in particular the anti-Asian hate that we have seen across this country these past few years. And so this was an important moment for them. I spoke to them before they came out. They were thrilled to come out and make sure that you heard directly from them of why they were here. I don't have much more to share. As you know, they're having a meeting right now with the president.
So moving on to Taiwan, Senator Duckworth is in Taiwan today, and China has sent 30 overflights to Taiwan. Is this seen as a threatening move? And can you just illuminate, what Senator Duckworth is doing over there, what the point of this mission is?
Yeah, I cannot speak for Senator Duckworth. You would have to reach out to her office. I don't have anything to say on why she's there.
Something you see as threatening?
It's something that we're monitoring. I don't have any comment on that at this time, but clearly these are things that we keep an eye on.
Can I ask you a question from the back?
Thank you so much. The president said yesterday that he believes Senator McConnell is a rational Republican. Senator McConnell said today that the group of lawmakers that are talking about guns in the wake of Uvalde are talking about the problem, which is, quote, mental illness and school safety. Does the president agree that that's the problem here?
So, look, when the president said that, he believes that there are some rational Republicans in the Senate who can come together and work on a bipartisan bill. Mitch McConnell is one of those folks. He does not believe, and we've talked about this. He's talked about this. We are the only country that is dealing with gun violence at the rate that we're dealing, and other countries have mental health issues. So what's the problem here? And so the problem is with guns and not having legislation to really deal with an issue that is